And good evening. Welcome to tonight's broadcast of the VRS Heroes program. I'm your host, George Pardos, and thank you for tuning in. I know we just got off the program with Sports Church, and the best news of the day is, of course, that Tom Brady lost. So, with that being said, we're going to move forward and talk a little bit about how good guys even get tired. So, so what I want to talk to you about today is something that got brought up today, and we had a reunion today at Ohio State. So I wrestled at Ohio State, and today was the alumni day, and Ohio State wrestled Maryland. And during the halftime, we had, alumni recognition day. So one of the things that we were bringing up today was some of the workouts that we used to do. And the reason I say this is because my junior year at Ohio State, they changed the rules about how many hours per week you could train. And I think it went to 20 hours or something like that. So one of the things that we used to talk about a lot was from both training and coaching was operational tempo. So there's a weird stat, and I'm going to use this for baseball first, but it happens in other sports too. In baseball, once a pitcher averages so many pitches and he goes over his pitch count, at 5% that he goes over his pitch count, his ERA goes up by like 1 point. And so when people wonder, well, why do you keep stats on pitchers, basketball players, is because you're training for your sport. And when you train for a sport, you train basically to go to the tempo that you're going to compete at. So, so what I mean by that is that if for example, in powerlifting, at a powerlifting meet, you have nine lifts. You have 3 deadlift, 3 bench, and 3 squat. So if you haven't done most of the time, not all, you have enough time in between sets to rest. And sometimes if you haven't done enough volume training, people will go to a powerlifting meet and bomb. I've seen people go 2 for 9 at a powerlift. It's just some crazy number. I mean, they get their first, or 3 for 9, and they don't always get all 3 lifts. But one of the things that happens with it is the fact is that you train the way that you want to compete. So one of the things that we used to do in practice, and this is why it's important to understand this. If you're training for something, and it doesn't matter what it is, if you're training for something, you're going to compete the way you practice. And one of the things that we used to do in practice was we would have, shark bait matches. We would wrestle 6 matches in a day. And then, you would wrestle a 7-minute match, take a break, go get water, come back, and we would do 7 matches. That's about 49 minutes of live wrestling. But it conditioned you for a tournament that you might have to go to where you would wrestle for, 4 or 5 matches. And one of the things, and Rob, you're right about that. You practice the way you want to play. And so one of the things that, given a prime example of this, was when Florida beat Ohio State in the national championship. And we just, when they had a team, they played game conditions going up to that game. And every Saturday they played like they were in a game with referees, and it made it game-like conditions. And so they were in better football shape, and I showed up because we just got shellacked. But the point that I'm saying is that you practice the way you play. And one of the things that I have seen, especially recently, is people don't write out programs about what tempo that they're going to work out at. And they say, well, I'm going to do 20 sets, and this. Okay, that's great. How much time in between? But the reason this is important is fatigue will make cowards of us all. And one of the worst things I've ever seen, and this was Muhammad Ali fought Larry Holmes, and Ali was just out of shape. He was horrible. He was not in good shape. Ali, Holmes beat him, and they literally had to stop the fight because he was so tired. Yeah, it was Gene. I know. I was there. Gene, you don't have to remind me. I was there. I was there for both of them. Yeah, I know. I was there. So, and we had Greg Oden, who's arguably one of the best basketball players to ever come out of Ohio State. But the point is that when you start getting tired, you wind up making mistakes. You wind up you wind up doing things that are uncharacteristic, and then you wind up having injuries. So one of the things that if you start taking a look at basketball players, they measure how much time, minutes played, because what they found out is that if you're averaging a professional basketball game is 48 minutes, and most, I don't know what the average time is, but once you go above your time, like say you were averaging 36 minutes or 38 minutes or whatever, if you start going above your time, you start having more turnovers, more fouls, because you're not used to playing that. You're not used to playing at that tempo. It's the same thing with boxers. Boxers, they measure, like Floyd Mayweather, Tyson Fury, Joshua, and all them. They measure how many how many punches they're throwing per round, because if you start throwing too many punches, you're going to tire yourself out. That's why when Ali beat George Foreman, he did that rope-a-dope because, George was throwing more punches than he normally would because Ali was, hanging on the ropes. Well, it got him tired out. And by the time that Ali knocked him out, George just said, I was too tired. I mean, I had, thrown too many punches. And the reason I say this is that what happens in life, and not just in sports, but in life in general, when you get tired of something, you have a tendency to make mistakes. And this is why I say it's important to rest. It's important to take a rest, psychologically from things, emotionally, physically. I mean, and people go like, well, man, I'll sleep when I'm tired. No, you won't. You'll be dead. And one of the things that we talk about on the station is about veteran suicides. And one of the things with veteran suicides is people don't necessarily want to kill themselves. They just want the pain to stop, and because they're tired of it. And so that is one of the reasons why I say, if you burn yourself out at work, you're not going to be able to perform. I mean, yeah, there's some people out there. I mean, I don't know that, that you could work 100 hours a week. I've done it, but you can't do that forever. So if you are in that kind of situation, then you might think about what tempo can you keep up with? And then when is it time to take a break? Because when there was a trader that a few years ago lost like a ton of money because he missed a decimal point, and it cost the bank. It was in Japan, and it cost the bank like $100 million. I mean, it was some crazy number. I can look up the story, but the point of it is that he was tired, and he made a mistake that cost his firm a ton of money. And it's the same thing with lawyers. It's the same thing that I've seen cases where a lawyer makes a mistake in a contract that forgets to put in a period or something like that because they're tired, and then they make that that simple mistake because they're tired winds up being very, cost them a lot more money because of that. So, and also there's a thing I'm gonna, this is credit goes to Louis Simmons, but it's a true statement. You can only operate at 90% for about 21 days, training wise. After that, your central nervous system starts to shut down. So one of the things that we used to have at when I was in the Marine Corps, and we wrestled. We would have practice every day. We would have practice. We'd have 2 practices a day, but on Thursdays, one of the things we did in the afternoon, we would just play games. Like we'd play basketball. We would, go do Indian runs. We did something that didn't involve wrestling, and we found out that when you did stuff like that, you actually got a chance to relax a little bit, and then you did not, hurt yourself. It's the same thing with, rest days that in lifting. Sundays, I mean, not because it's any other day, but, when you did on Sundays, you did active rest. I mean, you might do yoga, you might do stretching, you might do, plyometric. You did something that was a little bit different so you could rest. The point that I'm saying with this is that if you are, whether it's business, whether it's personal, or whether it is, physical, you've got to take rest days because fatigue will rise up and bite you in the ass. And that's why you have a lot of times you have a lot of like even couples get cabin fever because they close proximity too long. And the point that I'm saying about that is that if you're going to, whatever endeavor that you're going to do, you're better off being consistent, and instead of being, a lot of highs and then a lot of lows, because then you wind up, what winds up happening is those lows take longer to recover from. And so one of the things that like I said, for example, if you wind up having if you wind up getting ready, like you're training for a fight, you get in the ring and then you wind up too burned out, your recovery time afterwards is going to take way too long. And it's the same thing. That's why, you have camps, most camps start 6 weeks, 8 weeks out, because they figure that you're going to be at a training level. Then you up that training, to get into a fighting shape. But most fighters stay not at peak performance, but they stay close to it. Then, when they have they get into a camp, their camp is 8-9 weeks out, 60 days. And I mean, even, you think about this, even Marine Corps boot camp is 10 weeks, because they figure, 10 or 11 weeks, is enough to train you to be, a basic Marine. I don't know what the Air Force, I don't know what the Air Force or the Army or Navy boot camp is. I can, but again, if you, if you go to boot camp for 11 weeks, they train you enough to be a basic Marine in 11 weeks. Again, and even in the Marine Corps, during boot camp, you have rest days on Sunday that, it's you go to church and, you do things that are, I don't know, whatever, you clean the barracks and, they're not training you to do crazy stuff on Sundays. So this is why I say is that if you are doing something, and, you want to do things better, come up with an operational tempo that helps you. Whether it's, say I'm going to train. Well, if you're going to go lift, how many days a week can you actually go lift? 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, consistency of action actually develops more than, than than going hard 2 days a week or 3 days a week rather than going hard, than going at a good level for 5 days. And what I mean by that is that people think that every time you got to go in, you do max. You don't. You don't go in and max every day. Now, mind you, there are some people that are going to say, yeah, that's the Romanian method. Well, you're not an elite athlete to begin with, so stop that. And so when you get better results when you're consistent. The same thing in business. You're better off in business making 10 phone calls a day, but being able to do that every day for 10 sales calls. You're better, 10, 20 sales calls, whatever. You're better off doing that once a day, every day, that you can keep that up, rather than doing 30 calls in one day and then the rest of the time you're not doing anything. It's just the way it is. So that's the reason behind it. The other thing that I want to say too is that when you talk about operational tempo, one of the things that I hear this thing all the time, and it just drives me batty. They talk about getting out of your comfort zone. Well, what does that exactly mean? I've never understood what that means when do some. I'm like, okay, if you get out of your comfort zone and you're asking, it's like asking your quarterback to play defensive line. That you don't want to do something that somebody is incapable of. And I got to tell you this. One of the things that Louis used to make us do. This is from Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell. He would make us try a weight that was a little bit higher than we would normally be able to do, just to get the feel of it. Now, we had great spotters. We had, safety measures, and we'd have straps, and I tried a weight one time when I was squatting that was probably 40 pounds more than my max. Just to try it. And I did, I had a decent squat. I had a great deadlift, and my bench was average, but I tried I put some weight on my back with a squat suit on. That was a little bit more than I went down maybe 4 to 5 inches. I mean, it was a very high squat. But it just, I could feel what that felt like, but that was 40 pounds past my max. I knew that when I did that, I would never be able to squat that weight ever. But you understand what it felt like. The point that I'm saying is that when you get out of your comfort zone and you try to do something you're not used to, bad things happen. You get hurt. I mean, and I've seen that time and time again. So do things that challenge you, but don't do things that are so out of your comfort zone that if you were to try them, that you would get squashed. I mean, if you're used to benching 400 pounds or 300 pounds, and then all of a sudden you put 350 on, that doesn't sound like a lot more weight, but that's an increase in 50 pounds. Yeah, but I mean, you could say you could work up to it, Richard, but the problem with that is a man has got to know his limits. And the point that I say to that is that when you put people to do something that is uncomfortable, they either fold, they do things wrong, or they get hurt. And I've seen more people get hurt in the gym. And this is, coming from it, like I said, I've trained, I was a strength and conditioning coach at Ohio State. I was assistant wrestling coach. I've seen more guys get hurt at the gym trying weight that is too much for them. And then they get squashed underneath it because somebody's like, oh, yeah. Well, if you haven't benched, if your best PR, your best personal record is 315, and then you go jump up to 350, that is a, 10% jump. That's a lot, at a certain level that just, you get hurt. And even Usain Bolt, I'm going to give you a prime example. Usain Bolt in his last race tore his hamstring. Now, this is running an event that he's been consistently doing for 3 Olympics. And his last race, he wound up tearing his hamstring. Even it was an event that he had done time after time after time. So, what can you take away from this? Well, here's the thing: know where your limit is, know where your tempo is. Learn is what happens when you get tired, and then stay within that framework. If you're used to working 70 hours a week and you need to work, an extra 10%, that's fine. But if you are working 50 hours a week and all of a sudden you think you can work, 60 and 70 hours a week every week for, you're going to make mistakes. So one, yeah, you're right, work up to it, but also know your limits. And the other thing is that I've seen people doing stupid stuff. Like I've seen, guys tear their bicep deadlifting because they were trying to deadlift out of their training phase. It was just too heavy, and they weren't stretched out enough. They weren't they weren't loose enough, and they do that all the time. And that's why you see, I'll show you a prime example in this is how many times do you have in did I say that, did they have in football practice, you see that that you see football players going to training camp and tearing their hamstrings. Well, it's because they weren't ready. They just weren't ready. And these are guys professional that get paid to work out the whole year. And even still today, they have, even today, you have guys tearing their hamstrings in football camp. I mean, that just shows that they hadn't trained enough. So with that being said, you've got to come out with a number where there's a maintenance phase, a training phase, and a competition phase where you can only stay in that competition phase for so long. So and like I said, if you are overtrained, there are some things that happen. And if you are you get poor quality sleep, that and this isn't just in training, but another thing, you get your muscles are sore. I'll give you an example of something that's something that we used to, we would have practices, and if we were too tired, you wouldn't be able to perform or even get a takedown. I mean, we'd go into the room, and we couldn't even, I mean, you were just too tired, you're fatigued, and you would fall asleep during class. I mean, that was one of the things that, your performance would go down. I remember, one of the things that, and this is this is coming from a guy by the name of Chuck Vogelpool, who I think is by far is one of the best power lifters to ever lift. But he, when he was overtraining, some guys would overtrain with him, and their actual numbers and performance would go down. Why? Because they weren't taking enough time to they weren't taking enough time to get they weren't taking enough time to recover. It was the same thing with if your performance goes down, then it's sometimes you've got a lot of times you have constipation. You become more moody. Those are kind of the things of overtraining. So how do you do that? Well, you start taking rest. And one of the things that I've said is that if you're tired, instead of, if you could bench 300 pounds, cut down your, where you would, what Louis would do is if you were three, say take your weight, whatever your benching weight is, instead of training at 270, which is at 300 pounds, which is 90%, you would drop down to 215 or 220, and just increase your speed work. Take a little bit longer time in between workouts. And we would do that in wrestling as well. I mean, we would have days off, and sometimes also if you're at a better if you are at an elite level, your recovery time, if you're training at a higher level, your recovery time should be less because you're used to it. So, when I was competing, one day off a week was enough to recover. I mean, and you would, that you would have your, say maybe your cheat meal, or you're not old, fat, and broke. Stop it. You're not. But one of the things that we would do is on Saturday, we'd have, on Saturday, what we would do is have Saturday morning practice, and we would just drill, go through technique. Then on Sunday, we'd have Sunday night lifts. But what we would do in between is that one night a week, on Saturday nights, I used to go get a big steak and, would eat more to get that, a little bit extra nutrition, so your body would recover. And the other thing is that one of the and it's the same thing with, and I mean, I'm saying that from exercising, but if you have a bad day, work is getting to you, take the day off, go do something mindless, go to a movie, and maybe one day or of rest in a week might give you that, or, take a Wednesday off and go do something, go, on a nature hike or something like that. And that is the thing that people, that we talk about. And so when you are tired, know the signs of it first. And then how is it you take a mental health day? Because again, even in work, people say this all the time, but people kill themselves for work, for people that will replace you at work the next day, even if you're dead. I mean, seriously. And then, and that is one of the things, if you're getting mad, easier, at little things, then that happens all the time as well. So, you have those things that happen all the time, where it is the issue is, look at the signs of it and see how you can fix it. And if you are getting, you are getting restless, you are getting angry at little things, yeah, maybe it is time to get, take a day off, take some downtime. And that is, the best, and like I said, no one can go even, you can't run a car at full throttle without expecting a gasket to blow. I think AJ Foyt said that. So that's all we got tonight. We will be back on here tomorrow with Ron Ripley and the Replonians. We have, like I said, I hope some of the stuff that we're covering on here is helping you. And again, just remember is that, you got to take care of yourself first, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't expect other people to do it for you. Anyway, thank you for listening in tonight. I'm your host, George Pardos, and we will see you shortly.